What's up to my Beyond Jiu-Jitsu podcast YouTube viewers? Thank you so much for watching the podcast, listening to the podcast via YouTube. I just wanted to jump on and apologize in advance. There is no video footage for this episode today. Unfortunately, I made a mistake of that all videographers try to avoid, and I formatted my card before I got the footage. Long story short, it overflowed onto card number 2, which it doesn't normally do because the files normally fit on card number 1. However, I wasn't aware of that and I deleted all of the video footage, a bit of a technical glitch on my behalf. So unfortunately, there is no video footage today. There is still audio. As you'll see in a moment, it's just a blank artwork screen with the audio version of the podcast. So if you're still interested, it's a great episode. We cover some questions and then we get into position versus submission. So thanks again for watching / listening to the Beyond Jiu-Jitsu podcast on YouTube. Really appreciate your support. See you guys. Enjoy the episode. Welcome to the Beyond Jiu-Jitsu podcast. I am your co-host, Kieren Lefebvre, a blue belt under the black belt sitting across from me, Adam Childs.
So you're going to say you do great and powerful. And I was going to be like, don't do it, Kieren. Now that I know it's a stupid Rogan reference.
I need to wait. I need to wait. I'll do it in the future. But today's episode is all about position over submission. This is more a conceptual idea. So get your notepads out. This one's going to be jam-packed with lots of key takeaways and aha light bulb moments, hopefully. But
I hope so, Kieren. I'm hoping I can learn a thing or two.
You will. Stay tuned for classes. Let's bow onto the mats. Class has begun. Blue belts in session. Okay, so we have a very special little segment at the start. We're going to get straight into it. Last episode, we were really plugging, in the last few episodes, we've really been plugging people submitting audio questions to the show. To do that, you can do it via the first link in our link tree on our Instagram. So we are doing a exclusive audio only Q&A right now, even though it's not episode 70 yet. That is our Q&A episode. Our next one is episode 70. So get your questions in, but we're going to answer 2 audio questions that have been submitted by some listeners.
Yeah,
so
essentially, because if you're wondering why we're jumping that gun, it's because we're giving them like that sort of reward of, they actually sent through an audio question.
Thank you.
You don't need to wait 10 more episodes until the next Q&A comes out. We're going to answer your question already as a way to say thanks for actually using the link tree.
Exactly. Thank you. And let's get into it. First question is from Aaron.
Hi, Adam and Kieren. Long-time listener, long-time frustrated white belt. I've been training for about 5 years and seem to be riddled with injuries. This time I'm on the sideline due to a torn LCL, PLC, and a bunch of other issues with the right knee, which occurred from trying to escape a De La Riva guard incorrectly. Any tips or guidance on what I should do over the next few months before I'm back on the mats? Always appreciate your perspective and really appreciate your time. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, that knee issue can really suck.
Knees.
Yeah, I've had like a little knee niggle. I'll say I thought it may have been something torn. I got an MRI. It was all good. But even with the bruising, I was off the mats for like a month. I think it was a while. It was like 3 weeks at least. So I mean, I don't know how you feel, Aaron, but I kind of sympathize.
Yeah, knees are definitely my problem area. I've had two knee surgeries. People tend to always have like one or two areas of their body that are the weaker link in the chain.
For yours, it's definitely knees in your brain.
Yeah, my knees are my face.
Low blow.
Yeah. So yeah, I definitely sympathize with you big time. Not only have I had 2 knee surgeries, I've had multiple knee injuries that have required substantial rehab. In terms of what you can do between now and getting back on the mats, I mean, I don't know where you are in the stages of your rehab. So the fact that you know what the injury is tells me that you've probably had an MRI and that you've probably seen a physio. So obviously all your rehab stuff, I've said multiple times before that you need to have a physio who understands what you're trying to do in jiu-jitsu. So that De La Riva position, I don't know exactly how it happened, but you just said trying to escape De La Riva incorrectly. Whether that was, that may have been the case, but I've seen knees go just from being in De La Riva because the person on the bottom is actively trying to close your knee, and you don't want that to happen. You're trying to open it out, right? So that's putting heaps of tension on your LCL, the lateral cruciate ligament on there that runs down the outside of your knee. Okay, so it's not unheard of to injure that part of your knee just being in that position. I don't mean just like statically being there. Like it's not like, whoa, careful if you step into someone's De La Riva guard, you'll blow out your knee. But I mean, it can happen. So maybe you didn't do anything incorrectly. So make sure the physio that you have understands what you're trying to do so your rehab is appropriate. Moving on from that, I think what you were trying to get at with the question, because you're not coming to us for medical advice, I don't think. If you are, shame on you, because we don't know anything.
If you are, Aaron, I can't help you.
Right. Obviously, yeah. So I'm going to assume you got your rehab in your order. You're doing all your stability, your mobility stuff. You're, doing all your foam rolling and all that sort of good stuff. What can you be doing for your jiu-jitsu between now and getting back on the mats? Well, we did an episode a while back, episode 51, how to train when you can't train. We were more kind of addressing can't train because lockdown and
traveling and
things like that. But I'll tell you what I did coming back from my knee surgeries, and that might help you. So firstly, I didn't have all instructionals and the wealth of information that we have nowadays. So you can obviously go that route, right? You can watch instructionals, whereas I was looking at, Gracie magazines, and I was, God, how old do I feel now? Like looking at Gracie magazines and looking at my notes that I would take and things like that. But as soon as I had any ability to do anything close to jiu-jitsu, I just wanted to be in the gym and on the mats. So I would go to a particular class that I was allowed to do the warm-up and do the technique, but I wouldn't do any of the rolling. Right? So obviously I wasn't turning up to competition training because that's comp training. There's, if you're not ready to train as a competitor, that's not the class for you to turn up to. So I was essentially, even as like my second knee surgery, I was a purple belt. I was turning up to like beginner classes. And when I say beginner classes, these classes were designed for people who had 0 or 1 stripe on their white belt. Like I mean classes where people didn't even know how to hip escape. But, so obviously for me, I don't want to say I wasn't learning anything, but I was still on the mats and I'm still, getting some movement, and I'm not just sitting on the couch doing nothing. I was learning through teaching, because then I would be, partnered up with a white belt who doesn't know anything. So I would be, helping them do their cross collar choke or whatever. Okay. So if you have a gym that will let you essentially train while you're injured, do that, right? As soon as you're able to, go to the gym and do the warm up, or the parts of the warm up you can, and then do the technique. If it's a technique that you can't do because of your knee, don't do that. Hopefully you've got a coach and a gym who allows you to work around your injury. That would be my advice, right? Without knowing the exact specifics of where your knee's at, assuming you've got all your rehab in order, because you should be consulting with a physio and whatnot. You got your rehab in order. As soon as you can, get into the gym, doing similar things to like I said. And if you're not in the gym, man, there's just so much information. But try not to overwhelm yourself with information. So
don't like watch 4 instructionals in a row, pick one or something.
Yeah, like pick one. And you might even actually, what you might want to do, Aaron, is already think about, I don't know what, if you've been training on and off for 5 years, I know you said you're still a frustrated white belt, but if you've been training on and off for 5 years, you've probably been training enough to kind of know your style or the things you like to do or don't like to do. Maybe while you're sitting there trying to watch YouTube or instructionals, think about, okay, well, what guard or passing position or whatever it is you like to do, can I do that is less demanding on my knee? So, you said it was your right knee. So let's say if you're playing guard, you could still play De La Riva as the person on the bottom because it's your left leg that is the De La Riva hook, right? Or so you definitely wouldn't if you're someone who plays spider lasso guard and you put the lasso in with your right leg, man, you're not going to want to come back from an LCL tear and be doing that because it's the external rotation in your knee and hip that puts hips a load on your LCL. So you're not going to want to be doing that. You're going to want to look at a guard that's a bit more forgiving. So you might start to look at half guard. This is what we did with Joey, my black belt who had a full ACL reconstruction. Prior to that, he was heaps of butterfly guard and X guard. And, that external rotation load on the hooks was a bit much coming back from that surgery. So he started working on half guard. If you're passing, okay, it's your right knee. If you're like most people and you step in with your right leg to pass, you might want to start, working to pass to the other side, step in with your left leg. And, so that might be a simpler transition. You're not having to relearn a whole bunch of stuff. You're just having to now try to become proficient at it on the other side. So that's something to keep into consideration when you're doing some self-study, if you will. And I think, that would be my advice, Aaron, without sitting across the table from you and getting more back and forth information. Rehab's in order, right? I'm assuming it is. If it's not, get that shit in order. Get a physio who knows what's up, right? Do self-study, YouTube stuff that is applicable to you post knee injury. So I can already tell you, don't go watching some butterfly guard, X guard instructional because that's going to be rough, real rough on an LCL recovery. You're not going to want to do that when you get back in the gym. And then, if you're already able to and you have a gym coach who allows you to, go in and train. Just don't do the bits of the class that you can't do, right? Some gyms aren't going to let you do that, right? Which boggles my mind. But anyway, right? If you're at my gym, for example, you would be able to come in and do the warm-up, do the drilling, and then you're still there for the class. Don't then think you can leave because that's really rude. You can stretch while everyone rolls. You can learn from watching people roll. You can make notes while people are rolling. You can maybe ask your coach some other questions you have while people are rolling. So still a lot to be learnt from being in the gym.
Yeah, I've done that a lot whilst being injured. And one thing that I learned through doing that is don't show up to competition classes or 6:30s. Because you'll be there for a while. Like the drilling and the warm up is like, depending on the class, sometimes it's like half an hour and then it's an hour of rolls. If you're sitting there for an hour, you'll get depressed real quick. So just do the hour classes.
Like,
it can be it's rough. I've done it before. It's beneficial. It keeps you engaged with the team. You can work on your notes, all that sort of stuff. You can observe, like learn from observing. But at the same time, I wouldn't hold it against you if you didn't want to do that.
Yeah, like when I was at the point of my recovery or rehab where I still wasn't even able to drill, I often would steer pretty clear from the gym.
Yeah.
Because I would just find it really hard to, like, I'd just want to train.
Yeah.
It's like yesterday, I tweaked my neck a little bit and I didn't even go to the gym. I got someone else to teach for me. Because I was like, man, I'm just going to train if I go.
Yeah.
And I can't, like, this is quite sore.
Yeah.
So I get that too. It's kind of like if you're on a diet or if you're cutting weight and you're like, I'm just going to go watch this person eat pizza.
Yeah. I'm going to go hang out at KFC for a while.
I'm just going to go smell all this food, but not eat it.
Probably don't do that. So hopefully that helped, Aaron. And thanks for submitting the question. Here's the next question.
Hello, Kieren and Adam. This is Frank from Greece. I really like the podcast, or I love it. I listen to it quite often. And my question for today would be, was there any point in your white belt journey just before you got promoted to blue belt, or even before that, when you started thinking that you could get promoted to blue belts in the next promotions? If yes, what was this exactly? Were you smashing the new white belts? Were you holding your own against newer blue belts? Were you submitting blue belts? What was it exactly? Cheers.
Awesome question.
That's a
Shout
good
out
question.
to Frank from Greece.
I want to hear your answer to this question first.
Yeah, so my indication was a lot of subtle clues Adam was giving during podcast. Mine's a little bit different. No, but I think as the person in this room right now that has been promoted to blue belt most recently, I think I definitely, when I got promoted, I felt like I was ready for the belt. I mean, I know we've spoken a lot that sometimes people go through that period where they're like, oh, am I actually, do I deserve this belt? Am I actually a purple belt, a blue belt, a whatever belt? And for me, I didn't really have that. Maybe it's my arrogance. I'm going to say probably it is. But I felt ready to be a blue belt. I felt like I was ready to compete at blue belt. And I did well my first blue belt competition. So that everything
Bling,
was
bling.
Yeah, everything was reinforced in my own mind there, in my own confidence that, yep, I'm a blue belt. I'm good to go. I think but
what made you feel like?
Yeah, I think the indicator was that my jiu-jitsu got to the point where I was comfortable in all positions. I knew I knew the objective. I knew what I needed to do. And even against certain, not even just positions, but certain very specific positions, I had something to deal with it. Like I had something to deal with Spider Guard. I had something to deal with De La Riva. I had something to deal with most of the general jiu-jitsu positions. So I was comfortable in anything that someone could throw at me. I was like, okay, I'm familiar with this, if that makes sense.
Yep.
And then what else was my really key indicator was I started to not only be able to hold my own against blue belts, but I started to get the upper hand on a lot of the blue belts because I do train a lot more than most. So that it was my journey was a little bit different. But yeah, to answer your question specifically, Frank, yeah, I started to tap a lot of blue belts. I started to be a tough time for some of the purple belts. And yeah, so that gave me a lot more confidence. I also competed a lot at white belt. The competitions that I went in that I was like fit and good to go, I did pretty well. So I had that competition experience. I was able to hold my own or beat blue belts already. And I was comfortable in most positions. Like I wasn't an expert and I still am not. I'm a fucking blue belt, but I was comfortable in those positions. So that's mine.
Yeah, it's actually quite similar to mine. I also was on a podcast back and yeah, it was very similar for me. I competed a lot at my lower belts. And so I had very direct opponent comparisons. So yeah, it was quite similar. I was by far I don't think there were any white belts in the gym that I trained at the time that could present any issues, except for one dude who was like 330 pounds, big guy.
Jeez.
He was very heavy.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I could deal with all the white belts. I would, tap all the blue belts. And then, yeah, it was only the purple belts and up. And even like one or two of the purple belts, I would give a really hard time to, or even like beat them.
Yeah.
Same
situation.
Was essentially, and obviously it's all relative. Was I at a shit gym or not? I don't know. I was a white belt, right? Like, so I can't tell you, right? Because my comparison, I was a white belt. What am I comparing it to? But then, yeah, I competed as well. I think at white belt, there was only one comp that I didn't make the podium. So I was always either winning or making the podium in all my competitions. And
that's so funny. I had one comp that I didn't make the podium at white belt as well.
Holy shit! It's just the only difference is
I'm a little fucking clone.
The only difference is that I changed gyms once I got my blue belt. So
interesting ideas for me. It's like I'm a mini Adam, except I'm not fucking 6'10". I'm fucking 5'10".
And then I had there wasn't like a grading, but I was moving to Brazil. Like I'd already said to because I wasn't in Brazil at the time. I was in Canada, and I'd said to my coach that I was moving to Brazil and that I wanted to pursue jiu-jitsu and stuff.
What was his reaction to that? I don't think I've ever asked you, like a white belt, first year of training, coming up to a black belt and being like, hey bro, I'm going to Brazil to fucking pursue jiu-jitsu for life. See you later.
I think he understood it because he was also someone who traveled to pursue jiu-jitsu.
Oh,
he was a Canadian guy who was one of only his name's Shane Rice is his name. Did quite well as well in competition. He used to kind of make the podium and stuff. And I think his biggest success was silver at No-Gi Worlds, losing to Cobrinha.
Oh,
I
wow.
believe. So he did really well,
Shit,
he was good. And a black belt from Rickson Gracie. I believe he's one of only 2 non-Brazilians to be a black belt from Rickson. And so he would often travel down from Canada down to the US to see Rickson, or down to Brazil to see Rickson. So I guess he understood, right? But yeah, so he already knew I was moving. And so there was that kind of will he, that anticipation of will he give me my blue belt before I go?
Yeah.
So I kind of had that sort of inkling as well. So, but yeah, in terms of I definitely felt I was ready for it. Like I said, very similar to you. I was beating all the white belts and blue belts in the gym. I was, beating some of the purple belts. I was winning or making the podium in all my competitions. And then I was moving. So, there was that kind of will I get it before I move sort of thing. So yeah, that's I felt like I was ready and that I deserved it, and I'm glad I got it when I did.
Yeah, awesome. That's sick. Now I will ask, just while we're on this topic, that a lot of the time people comment on my YouTube, or I see on Reddit, or wherever I get my information from. You guys know by now that I just get it surfing the internet. That I do see people say things along the lines of, I'm a white belt, I'm a 4-stripe or 3-stripe or whatever, and I'm smashing all the blue belts, I'm beating all the white belts, I'm this, I'm that, I'm fucking king shit. Why haven't I been given my blue belt yet? They approach it in an arrogant sort of way, I deserve it, I'm better. The whole I tapped a purple belt, therefore I'm a purple belt. I've gotten people like that, and you can tell by the way they write their comments or the way they're talking about it it's coming from a place of arrogance. So I will say that, not all coaches are just looking at how you perform against a blue belt to give you your blue belt. Sometimes
right. There's so many other
factors. Yeah. And I think just one from me, one of mine that I mentioned is being comfortable in different positions. Maybe you're very athletic. Maybe you're younger than most people at your gym, or you just have 10 years of lifting experience, or you just a freaking specimen, right? Maybe you're a Division 1 wrestler, or you played A-grade rugby, or whatever it is, and you come in and you just click with jiu-jitsu and you just start smashing. Cool. But are you a blue belt in terms of what you're capable of, or are your athletic attributes good enough to compensate for skill?
Well, yeah, it's the coach is going to be looking at multiple factors. Let's say, for example, you're currently a blue belt. Got your blue belt in November, was it?
November 20.
Right. He's got it tattooed on him, November
Right.
20. So you got your blue belt, the end of 2021, right? So let's just say you're a freshish blue belt, and you're tapping this 4-stripe purple belt in the gym who trains once a month, right? So I've got a mid 20-year-old blue belt who wants to be a competitor, and let's say a mid 40-year-old purple belt who trains once a month for a hobby. I don't look at that and go, oh, Kieren's tapping this purple belt who's 4 stripes and almost going to get his brown, so therefore I should just give Kieren a brown belt. No, those two things don't compare. It's kind of, last episode we talked about, am I too old to train? It's kind of like that as well. I'm not going to, if you tap a 65-year-old black belt, that doesn't mean you're a black belt, nor should that black belt care if they get tapped by a 20-year-old blue belt who's, you can't compare those two things.
Sometimes you're going to catch someone as well.
Yeah.
Fuck, if you know enough jiu-jitsu, you should be able to, once in a blue moon, catch a upper belt if they're being careless or they let you play too much and punish them for it.
So
you should be able to do that.
So yeah, it shouldn't be I don't think I came from a place of arrogance when I had those thoughts. I just kind of looked around and I was oh, well, I'm kind of beating everyone, and that's reinforced by my performance in competitions.
That's the key. Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, so I felt like it was probably time.
Awesome. Well, there you go. Thank you so much to Frank and Aaron.
How much better are the audio questions?
So much better. So much better hearing your beautiful voices instead of listening to mine.
I know, it's so nice to to not have to read out the questions in
Well,
our annoying voices.
Adam, you can't even read, so
I
I
know.
have to read.
Hey, 2022 goals, Kieren, all right?
Learn how to
By the
read.
time this goes out, maybe I've learnt my ABCDs.
Maybe.
Next time, won't you sing with me? It's so funny.
Definitely not.
Atlas knows his ABCDs. People, if you don't know, Atlas, my son, 2 years old, more or less knows his ABCDs, right? So he sings the whole song. And he gets to the end. Next time, won't you sing with me? And then you go to sing it with him, and he's like, no, just Atlas. And you're like, but you just asked me to sing it with you.
Did you know that they've changed that song? They've changed the ABCD song. They've like changed the tune to make it.
What?
Yeah, they've changed.
Since when?
So it's still like the Twinkle Twinkle Little Star sort of.
Well, because that's what I
melody.
was about to say. It's the
Yeah.
same melody as
But
Twinkle Twinkle.
They've modified it, so it's not the exact melody anymore. They've modified it, still the same rhythm, but they modified it to make it easier for kids to sing. So it's broken up. Like my girlfriend works in childcare, and she was singing it the other day, like telling me about it. I was like, no, that's an abomination. That should be illegal.
Do you know how it goes?
No, I can't remember. I only know the original, the real ABCD song, but I don't know this new fandangled bloody whatever they're pushing on kids these
Can't
days.
change ABC.
Yeah, well, they have. Anyway, for those that clicked on this episode expecting to hear about position versus submission, thank you for sticking out 25 minutes in. I know you would have gotten a lot out of those questions anyway.
Yeah, I thought they were good questions.
Yeah. So thank you. And here we go. Position versus submission. What do you think about that one?
I'm going to say...
I'm not a fan.
Yeah, that I'm not a fan.
Yeah.
I think that statement definitely kind of... I mean, if it comes from a good place with good intentions behind it, it makes sense, right? And, I'm not going to jump off mount to try to footlock someone or something like that, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe, no, or I'm not going to be on mount on the bottom and try to armbar you, right? Like, Kieran's trying to work that. Kieran's sitting there and his face is like, there's an armbar from mount bottom, right? So I understand like that. I mean, but I feel like that's kind of taking it to the extreme. I think a lot of instructors push it a little further to say, you always want to consolidate the position and then submission and whatever. And there's nothing wrong with that. I don't want to say I disagree with that. However, if you kind of have this inherent submission hunting style, like that's built into your jiu-jitsu DNA, I think long term that's just going to pay off so much better, right? It's the classic, the best defense is a good offense or whatever, right? If you look at some of the most successful fighters, man, they relentlessly hunt submissions.
Gordon Ryan,
Craig Jones, probably like one of the more current, not more, like it's not like they're not current, but like the newest guy in the limelight, Mika Galval. Dude, hits submissions from everywhere. Like
relentless.
Dude, from like the craziest positions. And I don't mean as in he gets mounted and he's on the bottom and he armbars people. Like, no, I'm not talking about stuff like that, but just, man, like the positions that he hits submissions from, or not even the positions, the transitions he hits submissions from, it's mind-boggling. It's so amazing, right?
Yeah, he's got really beautiful jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
It's really awesome to watch.
And it's kind of like that only comes from years of like prioritizing the submission, right? And it's kind of, I believe if you just continue to perpetually attack and hunt submissions just nonstop, it just opens up so many other things. And you can always fall back to consolidating a position, right? I mean, I think that's good advice to give beginners for sure, because beginners will do something stupid like jump on some flying footlock triangle platter something and break their neck, right? So I think it's good advice to give to beginners, because beginners often don't even understand the positions yet, right? But I think if you can build into your jiu-jitsu, years of hunting submissions, and even, so Cron Gracie is a good example, right? Hickson's son just was so entertaining to watch because he just always went after submissions. Even Hodge Gracie, who you could say is, has, I don't want to say boring jiu-jitsu, because it's not boring.
It's
but
methodical, yeah.
Yeah, it's super methodical and step by step. Like even he didn't really care so much about the position. Like he would say that he said that what he found really hard about transitioning from jiu-jitsu to MMA was that in jiu-jitsu, like he could be 10 points behind. It didn't matter, because then like once he tapped the dude, like the fight's over and you win. But that sort of, if you were in a position in MMA that hypothetically left you 10 points down, you've probably been punched and kicked in the head a few times, right? So you can't take that same approach in a striking martial art. So I honestly believe that if you can permanently look for the submission and have that built into your DNA, I think long term, it's better to breed that style and then later on teach the importance of not throwing away good positions than the other way around.
Yeah. And I think in my mind lately, this is like a revelation I've been going through pretty much right now, the last like few weeks really since my last comp, is that in my mind, when I thought of position over submission, I was thinking of a different concept, right? So let me break it down a little bit. In my last comp, I was rushing from position to position, hunting for submissions, but I was doing it, very, very quickly, very like, basically I was rushing. And I think that what the position over submission, what you're saying is to not disregard it, but to say, hey, look, submissions are very, very important and you should be hunting those a lot of the time, not over position, but as well as position. I was taking it too far the other way and I was like rushing, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I think I need to separate the whole like hunt for submissions and the position versus submission thing with rushing, because I've been in the comps I was in good positions, I was up on points and I was rushing around, and then I end up giving up my position to hunt for submissions. But it's different. You're not saying to rush, you're saying to hunt.
And I think if you build into yourself this thought of position over submission, it kind of by default leads you to think that submissions only come from somewhere where you have positional dominance, and that's just not true, right? There are so many submissions that come from a transitional position, right? So even, I'll give you a simple one. Let's say you have full mount on someone and you've got this belief of position over submission, as in I need to control mount and from mount work my submission, which is perfectly fine. Even people like Mika Galval and Craig Jones and Gordon Ryan can do that, right? I'm not saying that's not a thing. But what I mean is if you have this built in, like it's position over submission, what if like you're full mount on someone and they kind of bridge and roll and you just go, no, don't lose mount, don't lose the position, right? But when people bridge and roll, well, yeah, but even not that, right? Like, yeah, you could stay mount, but people bridge and roll and sometimes expose their arm and you can switch to a belly down armbar, right? Like that's a transitional submission. Like you can't really force someone to bridge and roll if they don't want to, right? But they've chosen to bridge and roll and expose their arm, and you can like that's a, you could put it into a category of, let's say, like opportunistic submissions or transitional submissions. Like you're taking it, it's only there in the moment, right? Be similar to someone who gets hit with a blast double but manages to get the guillotine, right? No one goes, okay, I'm going to let this dude blast double me and guillotine him. No, but you see people get blast doubled and jump on the guillotine at the same time, right? Like that's a transitional opportunistic, if you had this built in, it's position over submission, you'd have this belief of no, don't go for the guillotine, sprawl, right? Because you don't lose position. Well, no, like sometimes that's not how it is, right? You can go for the submission over the position, because at the end of the day, if the submission pays off, it doesn't matter.
I think that's the problem with any like dogmatic approach to anything really, but in jiu-jitsu specifically, because if you have like a mantra like this, then you're going to close the door on other opportunities. Like if you're like you said, if you're like, no, position needs to come first. Like I must get a position. Don't even think about a submission until I'm in mount, until I have the back, until, insert whatever position here, side control. Then you are going to miss those transitions. You are going to miss opportunities to buggy choke some motherfucker.
Right? Yeah. I mean, exactly. I feel so it's a bit hard, to address that one statement, because let's say that was, I don't know, let's say there was some jiu-jitsu clothing, and you know how different clothing, jiu-jitsu clothing, it'll have different stuff like,
Is this an analogy?
No, I'm not about to give an analogy.
Oh, okay.
I've never done such things, Kieren. How dare you? Right? It might just say, I don't know, whatever, jiu-jitsu. I've seen jiu-jitsu t-shirts that just list a bunch of different guards, X guard, Sparta guard. It's just like whatever, a piece of clothing.
Yeah.
If I saw a jiu-jitsu shirt that said like position over submission, right? Like it's the statement itself needs so many asterisks, because the statement alone, position over submission, like it's fine and sound advice, but there's so many but this and but that and but that, Whereas I feel if it was plastered on a t-shirt, it's kind of like saying this is our mantra,
Yeah, it needs a.
It's almost like the opposite of Storm, the brand Storm.
Yeah,
not as prevalent as they used to be in the jiu-jitsu gi apparel industry, but their sort of slogan is mission submission. That's like, I mean, that's very accurate, right? Because the overall goal
is to submit your opponent.
No one goes into a match at a professional level and goes like, the goal is to win by referee decision. Although no one goes, I want to win on points. The goal is to submit your opponent, right? Like that. So, and a lot of those submissions come about in transitions.
Now, another caveat on the other side, one thing that I personally, please correct me if I'm wrong here, one thing I don't like seeing, and because I used to do it myself, and I think it's a bad habit. Say, for example, if you're on top and you're looking to pass someone's open guard,
sitting back on the legs.
I think
it's funny you ask that.
The risk is too high in a competitive scenario. You're pretty much giving up a sweep if you don't get this up.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny you ask that, because I had this conversation only this morning with someone else.
Was it with Toby?
No, fuck that guy. No, Toby's a legend. Yeah, I think the only way to answer that is it depends on the rule set, right? Standard rules would, it's going to be, you're going to concede a sweep if they come on top and you don't get the submission. You essentially just gave away 2 points. However, maybe you're in a submission only rule set, so who cares? Maybe you're in a rule set where it would be a sweep, but you're down on points and there's 30 seconds left, and you've made that call that, well, I haven't been able to pass his guard in 9.5 minutes, so I'm going to try something else for the last 30 seconds.
Or if you have heel hooks available to you,
exactly.
That could be a good opportunity.
So if you're talking about the no-gi game as well, you see a lot of people ignore the point system because they're just so good at the leg game and they sit back on the legs, right? Like
I'm more talking about like white and blue belts who sit back on the straight footlock when they're in a guard passing situation.
Yeah, look, I'm not against it because I like people hunting the submission. What I don't like is essentially seeing someone, maybe they had the best intentions to sit back on the straight footlock, but they didn't. What they really did was they pulled X guard from being on top. I mean, if you go for it, I'm not 100% against it, right? But as long as you understand the rules that you're fighting under,
if you're even on points and there's like a minute left, you probably don't want to sit to.
Yeah, it might not be, you've just got to make that call, right? But I'm not 100% against it.
That's fair enough. I've done it to you once.
Did I tap? There's no way.
No, you didn't tap. No, you did.
No, I didn't.
Yes, yeah.
Did I?
Yeah, that was the one time, but you let me.
Oh, okay.
You were fucking around and it was one of those, I think we've spoken about this before, it was the only time I've ever like tapped you, but it wasn't because you let me sit back on it and you're like, yeah, fuck, see what happened. See this kid.
Yeah,
and then we rolled and
I think I remember. That wasn't that long ago.
That was me sitting back from a passing opportunity.
Was it?
Yeah, I just grabbed it and I fuck, see what happens. Yeah. But I mean,
because sometimes I'll do that, right? Like not taking,
you let me adjust it.
Not taking away from what you did.
Yeah.
But if I'm rolling with like, my lower belt students, obviously if I went into, not obviously, like I don't want to sound like a dick, but like if I went into every role, like it's a comp role, like I would like to think if it's one of my blue belt students,
you're going to win.
I'm going to win and just put smash on and whatever. So I don't do that every role. I do sometimes, but I'll often let my lower belt students get to a certain position because then I want to see where they're at in that position. Like if I want to gauge your ability to finish a straight footlock, there's no better way than me letting you get me in a straight footlock. And then,
and the key,
then me, so I'll do it with, like, okay, you just mentioned Toby, like, I might let myself get a little bit lazy and fall into his triangle and, okay, where's he at with his ability to finish a triangle? Oh shit, I actually had to defend, 99% to my ability to get out, or like, oh man, I had to use 100% and he still got me. Like, okay, his triangles are coming along really nice.
Exactly. I think the key in that specific situation that I was describing is you let me adjust it a little bit. Like I sat back and you're like, oh yeah, you sort of sat there with your leg dangling, just sort of looking at me and I'm like, okay. So I adjusted it. Yeah. And that was the key.
As you should as well,
Yeah, exactly. So a little bit different.
Yeah. But going back to position over submission, I mean, it's so hard to answer it without saying but and what if and this. Yeah, if we take it back to kind of the old school, like 20 years ago when people said position over submission, or not even less, 10 years ago, it was really just, like you want to consolidate every position and it's not possible to get a submission without having control of the position first, right? And that is, I mean, I don't want to say that's true, but that's also a thing. Gordon Ryan versus Roberto Jimenez, where before the fight he said, I'm going to tap him with an armbar from mount. Like he had an incredible amount of control of the position so he could kind of do whatever he wanted. So that has weight as well, right? But, at the same time, it's like, depends on the, I guess what I'm trying to say is you just can't forget about transitional or opportunistic submissions. Yeah. If I want to get a rear naked choke from the back, I need to be able to control the position to get that submission, right? But at the same time, I might rear naked choke you from just like a very opportunistic, there was a moment and there was a scramble and I jumped whatever. And and you just pounce on it, right? So it doesn't always have to be, I need to very methodically and in a controlled manner take his back, get my seatbelt, put my hooks in, and now I can rear naked choke him. Man, there might just be this split second where
you get the neck first and then you put the hooks in.
So I guess, position and submission can live in harmony.
And I think even
side by side, walking off into the sunset.
Little kiss.
That's twice you've now reminded me of this little kiss story. Last episode, this episode. Now I'm going to tell it.
Okay, so
all right. So two students, Jake actually doesn't even train anymore. But two of my first students, Dan and Jake. Jake's now old, fat, and retired.
He's coming in tonight, though, didn't he say?
Yeah, no, but I already messaged him yesterday. And Jake is someone who has had a few months off. And anyway, he said he was going to come back today. I messaged him yesterday being like, so Jake, which class you doing, the lunch? And Jake never just says no. He says, I might struggle to get there. He's not coming. Anyway, so Dan and Jake used to have this thing. I don't know why, but they would say like, they would be like, kish, to say kiss. They would be like, give me a little kish, like that. And then we have a French girl in the gym, Virginie, and she thought, because the way they were saying kiss, they were saying kish, is like how you would say quiche in French,
Right.
like the egg tart thing,
Yeah.
a quiche. And it went a step further because apparently in French, or I guess at least in her social circle or whatever in France, that if you call someone a quiche, like in French, if you call them a quiche, it's like calling someone stupid.
Right.
So just coincidentally turned out their dumb little joke of saying, give me a little kiss, but they would say like, give me a little quiche. Virginie thought they were like calling each other stupid because
Right.
like, that's the story. So it's like not a great story. I never turn that button off. I never said it was a great story, but last episode you said something that reminded me of it.
Sometimes,
and then this episode again.
sometimes we need to keep our stories to ourselves. But back on your Gordon Ryan piece, and you're basically saying like he's an example of someone that can do both, right? He can hunt submissions and dominate the position.
Well,
as
I
well.
would say those
do it all.
those 1%ers, the best guys in the world can do it.
I do remember
it all.
hearing. I don't know if it's directly from Danaher or about Danaher. I know that when DDS was a huge thing, the Danaher Death Squad, they were like in their prime. That was something John Danaher was really challenging, is that concept of position over submission. I know that he was someone who was really putting that into question and saying, nah, man, like submissions, let's go. Like,
Oh, was he?
And yeah. And his whole
He
philosophy.
probably got it from me.
Probably, yeah. I think he might have referenced you as well. Like, I learned this from the great and powerful Adam
I
Charles.
don't know, from that dickhead that no one knows about. Yeah, who that
Think he's
guy?
got a
No,
podcast?
the other one.
But yeah, that's something that he has been, pretty well known for, is to challenge that. And I think it's very much in his whole guard game. And you'll see that the DDS, those guys that popularized, leg attacks from guard, whereas he basically, I think he was saying it in one of his like, beginner new wave fucking instructionals that I watched. It was basically that traditional jiu-jitsu says that guard is a defensive position. When you're in guard, you want to advance your position to then submit. So you want to get out of your guard, you want to get on top, and then you can submit. Whereas Danaher is like, nah, man, you use that guard to attack. You want to be offensive. So it's not position over submission.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not disagreeing with him, but I don't know. Even when I first started jiu-jitsu, that wasn't the...
Okay, maybe he's talking out of his ass.
No, well, I guess he's probably saying like, back in the 80s when I started this conversation.
When I started talking.
Yeah, I don't know. Even when I started, guard was still like an offensive position.
Maybe I'm
I guess
too generally.
you don't have to go back too far where half guard, for example, was solely a position not to get past. Half guard was just like, shit,
You're telling me about that.
Don't let them get to side control. And then Gordo became really famous for half guard. Obviously, then Bernardo with deep half guard. Like, now we got Z guard. Like, half guard is an incredibly offensive position. So I get what he's saying. Yeah. But I mean, it's not like it's a revelation that's happened in the last decade.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you can attack from guard. Like, I mean, that's been the case for as long as I've been training, which is not that long, right? In the grand scheme of things. But anyway.
Yeah.
Just trying to just say it how it is.
Well, yeah, that was my 2 cents on the whole conversation position.
Yeah, I mean, we'll wrap it up there, but I would have liked to talk a bit more about position versus submission, so perhaps we can revisit it at another episode. But I did also enjoy doing those audio questions for the first time. That obviously took up the first chunk of the episode. So we can, talk about this in passing at another time. But yeah, they can be in harmony, submission over position. I think it's sound advice for very beginners, because like I said, beginners, we take for granted the shit that we know. A beginner doesn't even know what side control is, or mount, or back control, or half guard, so obviously you need to teach a bunch of these positions before people can do submissions safely, safe for themselves and for their partner.
Absolutely.
But, at a more advanced level, I'm going to say, submissions all the way, baby.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Beyond Jiu-Jitsu podcast.
Wow. Wait, isn't that a button?
Wow.
Oh. love it.
Yeah. If you want to support the show, you can do so by following us on Instagram, leaving us a review on your streaming platform of choice, wherever you get your podcast. Leave us a review, give us 5 stars, all that sort of stuff. If you want to leave us a negative review, though, please feel free. At least make it funny. That's the rule. If you're going to leave us a shit review, make it funny. And if you're leaving a shit review after listening to 48 minutes of episode 62, then wow. Okay. Fair enough, bro.
And if, guys, don't forget, episode 70 will be the next Q&A, Ask a Black Belt. Send in the audio questions.
Get those questions in.
It is
It's
in the
coming up quick.
Instagram bio. I think it was a way better way for us to deliver the questions.
Yes. Thank you to Aaron and Frank for being the first ones to submit audio questions.
Thanks so much, guys. Until next time, just tape it.